Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Astro Consciousness channel. I'm Millie, and I am here to give you your forecast for the week of December 16th to the 22nd. In this channel, we talk about the astrological energy of the week ahead and how you can integrate it into your personal and spiritual growth. As always, before I get into the week, I like to review where we're coming from in order to understand where we are headed. So when you're watching this, you're actually watching this on December 15th, which is the day of the full moon in Gemini. And you received that video from me last Sunday so that you could understand how the manifestations of this full moon in Gemini were unfolding throughout the week. And one of the things that I noticed was that the week felt so wobbly, a little wacky. There was a lot going on that didn't allow me personally to feel like I was landing. I know from colleagues, from clients, from readings that I was doing, the energy felt the same for some people. But what I also noticed was that there were some breakthroughs in terms of understanding, oh, this is really who I am now. Oh, this is the information that I needed in order to support some of the things that have been unfolding for me, some of the things that I have been questioning, especially with that Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. I don't know about you, but my dreams were truly informative, and they were very clear, clearer than I've had dreams in a very long time. And sure enough, I had a dream one night, which was, I think, like last Thursday. And then Friday throughout the day, I came across some news that just made absolute sense to me in terms of, oh, that's what my dream meant. And that's what I was able to see ahead of time. So it is a very intuitive time right now, even with the retrogrades. And by the time that we get into this week ahead of the 16th, Mercury is now direct. But I really invite you to also remember that at an energetic consciousness level, we are ascending, we are elevating consciousness. We are moving into a space in which different parts of us are being awakened so that we can begin to live life from a much more intuitive space. And so I invite you to really notice how everything around you, conversations, feelings, dreams, synchronicities, were there to inform you of all of that with Mercury retrograde. Because when Mercury retrogrades, it is the opportunity for the mind to slow down, for us to go within and to really pay attention to what's trying to come through. So another thing that happens on December 15th is that Mercury goes direct, and Mercury has been retrograde since November 25th. Again, I invite you to think about how much has happened since November 25th, the conversations you have had, the clarity that has come to you, even if you still don't know what's ahead, even if you don't have a clear idea of what's ahead, of how that's going to unfold, of how that's going to look. And this is something that I've touched on in my videos in the last couple of weeks, so I won't go into that much more. But here are some questions that I really invite you to consider as you move through the week ahead, because the week ahead is an interesting week where I think we're going to really begin to see how much of a past identity we are growing out of and how confusing that can actually be. Okay. So some of the questions I invite you to think about this week as Mercury is waking up from its retrograde. It remains stationed till the 18th in the evening. So there's still like a waking up of that Mercury retrograde, even though it's already direct. How did you reclaim your wisdom during that Mercury retrograde from November 25th to December 15th? How did you have to come back to yourself and your own knowing based on the experiences that you've had and the outgrowing of some of the identity that you've built around some of those experiences, right? What breakthroughs did you have? I noticed that this Mercury retrograde brought a lot of breakthroughs for people. And it was all so that we could begin to get in touch with the light, with the wisdom that exists within. At this point in time, what is your definition of freedom and liberation? This is especially important because one of the first things, really the first thing that the sun in Sagittarius did when Sagittarius season started a month ago was that it created a sextile to Pluto newly entered in Aquarius. And I remember talking about that in that week's forecast, and that is an incredibly empowering sextile. When the sun and Pluto meet, we are being invited to recognize the power that our presence, that our essence carries. But first, we have to acknowledge what that is. And so, the freedom and the liberation that we need to show up exactly as we are for who we are in a way where we're tired of being anything other than that. That's Pluto in Aquarius, and it was supportive during Sagittarius season. So, these are some questions that, if they serve as journal prompts, I hope that you will consider them. If not, hold them somewhere in the awareness of your days and see how those answers unfold for you throughout the week. So, with that said, let's get started. Monday, December 16th, we begin the week with the sun in conjunct Uranus in Taurus. So whenever there's a connection between Uranus and the sun, this speaks of the rebel in us wanting to come out. But an in conjunction is a few things. I think one, an in conjunction between the sun and Uranus can be a rebel without a cause. And the without a cause can be we're just causing a ruckus, we're just rocking the boat because I don't know, maybe we find it fun or we just want to ruffle some people's feathers, right? But the without a cause can also, I think, touch into the essence of not knowing that we are pushing against something, but the inner calling of a more honest expression of who we are is really coming through. Right? The sun in Sagittarius is the invitation to all of us, regardless of what sign we are, to step into a much more honest expression of ourselves. And the in conjunction to Uranus and Taurus, for some people, can feel very uncomfortable, right? Because Uranus and Taurus is about the shaking up of the tried and true, the shaking up of something that feels very grounded and very comfortable. And the in conjunction, the uncomfortable 150-degree connection between these two planets in us can feel like, I don't want to go to that family gathering. I normally would. I don't really know why, but I'm just not going to go, right? There's an element of not knowing. And I think, again, a lot of that has to do with the reconsideration of the role that we want to play in this life that really made itself clear with that Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. One of the things that I've been talking about for the last several weeks is the understanding that we cannot move forward in the same way, but we don't know what the other side looks like. Because what has been coming out, what has been cooking within us, if you will, is the most natural, honest expression of us. At least that has been the intention. And so to begin this week with the sun in conjunction to Uranus, which is an aspect that's active all week, I wouldn't be surprised if you kind of find yourself just kind of being like, well, F that, and no, I'm not going to do that, even though I would normally say yes, right? Pushing back and questioning. So if you know that that's the case, be mindful of how you're communicating that, because what it's really asking, the discomfort comes with when I have to be honest with what I really want. What part of me that hasn't been courageous enough to do that is triggered? That's really the question there. We know we can no longer ignore when our body contracts at the thought of being around certain people in certain places, but there's a conditioning and there's a pattern within us that has overridden that so many years. And now we realize I can't do that anymore. And so the discomfort there, the rebelling there can come off in various ways. And becoming mindful of it's not so much about yelling at people. It's not so much about causing conflict as much as it is about I get to express myself honestly. I get to say no if I really want to say no. On Tuesday, December 17th, we have the moon in Leo create an opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. Now, I don't usually bring in lunar aspects unless it's a new moon or a full moon, but I think it's important that we pay attention to this one because of the fact that we are beginning the week with an aspect that can make us a little edgy, can make us a little spicy. So then we move into Tuesday where the moon is in direct opposition to Pluto. This is an intensity in the way that we feel. But more importantly, we have to keep in mind that the moon is still under the influence of a full moon that was experienced on Sunday, December 15th. So even though the moon has left the sign of Gemini, it's still full. And the opposition to Pluto can still activate certain parts of us where we want to express. This week feels like a wanting to break free. And if that is something that is revealing itself to you just now, or it's something that you've been feeling for the last couple of weeks, you will notice that the week ahead is something where you just can't help but express that, where you just can't help but act from that space. Even though Mars is retrograde, I think especially because Mars is retrograde, there is a part of us that might be a little bit impulsive. So again, be mindful of that. More importantly, the opposition between the moon and Pluto is something that happens every single month. And to begin to pay attention to how the moon and Pluto represents the things that bring us joy, how we express our creativity, how we express love into the world. And the opposition to Pluto in Aquarius is there a group of people around me that opposes that? Is there a group of people that whose opinions matter more than the way that I want to express myself or more than the way that I feel? So it's an interesting dynamic there because whenever the moon and Pluto are involved, we're talking about deeply rooted, seated belief systems, psychological systems that have been built over time. And so the connection between these two, this luminary, the moon, and this planet Pluto, is interesting because it can actually give us quite the insight if we're paying attention to our triggers, holding them, observing them, and paying attention to what they're actually telling us exists within us still, some of the belief systems that we may still be carrying. Now, I think that one of the most important aspects of the week, even though we do have the winter solstice ahead on Saturday, and I'll get to that in a second, I actually think it's the Sun in Sagittarius square Neptune in Pisces. So the Sun in Sagittarius has really interesting connection to these outer planets that may make us not see ourselves very clearly. At least this is the way that a Sun square Neptune tends to manifest itself. So there is either a lack of clarity in the way that we're seeing ourselves, in the way that we're seeing others, in the way that we're seeing a situation. Now, here's when I think about all of the things that I've been talking about for the last several weeks, when I think about the things that I have been observing within myself and my growth and my evolution the last couple of weeks with clients, with colleagues in readings, this Sun in Sagittarius creating a 90-degree angle, a square to Neptune in Pisces at 27 degrees each, is the inability to see ourselves in the way that we used to and not being sure of the role that we play now at this moment in time in our lives, in certain people's lives, in our environment. Because remember, another thing that I've been repeating over and over again is that we are in a month of transition. There are a lot of big things happening for people. And so the Sun represents the ego. Neptune represents everything beyond the ego. the things that we cannot see, that we cannot touch in our 3D reality, but perhaps when we get in touch with that 5D reality through meditation, we see a greater self with a capital S. We connect with spirit, we connect with source energy, and something there tells us you are this too. So when we connect with that 5D universal energy and it tells us you are this too, what does that mean to the egoic sun energy? Whenever Neptune and the sun are involved, I would say that Neptune's energy tends to win, right? Because the planets do work in a bit of a hierarchy. And Neptune's energy is so all-encompassing that if we are not aware of what's happening, we can very much get lost, right? We can very much dissociate. We can very much go somewhere else to unplug and not deal with what's happening. On the other hand, Neptune energy is the energy that allows us to get in touch with a deeper sense of self, with something much greater. But what does that then mean to the sun? What does that then mean to that identity? And so remember, Sun-Uranus in conjunction, that is active all week, is saying, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that. I'm no longer playing by those rules. I'm not spending the holidays at that person's house. I'm going to do my own thing, right? And again, the in conjunction is this discomfort in being like, am I doing the right thing? Am I a jerk for doing that? No, but I'm choosing myself, right? And the square to Neptune in Pisces is I'm making these decisions, but I'm not really sure where I am or where I belong. This here is, I think it's a good thing. I think that it's a good thing that we don't have a clear idea on who our egoic selves are at this moment in time, because we are evolving and we are growing. And Neptune in Pisces is saying, what happens when you slow down? What happens when you get in touch with something much deeper and allow yourself to be guided by that? And can you trust that that's actually what's happening, right? Because Neptune in Pisces is also the reminder that spirit is always there. We are never not connected to spirit. We are never not connected to source and guidance. But our ego believes it is. Our ego believes a lot of times, depending on what we're experiencing in our lives, we tend to believe that we are separate from that we are separate from others when we never are. And so that square becomes really uncomfortable because we cannot see ourselves clearly. If I'm not in this relationship, then who am I, right? If I don't play this role in my family, then who am I? If I no longer do this for a living, then who am I? Those are some of the ways that this can be manifesting for some people. And I think that once we get into Capricorn season over the weekend and over the next month, it's going to feel less of that. We're going to feel obviously more grounded energy with the earth sign, but this is really important because we are still moving into Capricorn season with this new understanding of who we really are trying to emerge, right? I think a more practical way to look at this Sun square Neptune is the understanding that some things we just have to let go of, some things we just have to surrender to, right? If we are planning something for next year and we are not getting the answers that we need, we kind of just have to let it go, because there might be a little bit of miscommunication, or you're not really sure what the other person is saying. It's almost like two people thinking that they're having the same conversation, but they're having different conversations. So be very mindful of the way that you express yourself. And if you are in negotiations, if you are at work, if you are working with people, try to be as clear as possible. And if you feel that someone is not being clear with you, then keep in mind that this is also what's happening. In addition, if none of that resonates with you, this is a really beautiful day to just kind of hang out, to just chill, meditate, go for a long walk, be by water because of that Neptune and Pisces energy. There's something really beautiful about whenever we have interesting aspects to Neptune, especially harder aspects like a square, and we are able to give ourselves time and space to just be without trying to figure something out, we actually receive downloads. We actually receive the guidance and the answers that we need, because Neptune and Pisces will always remind us of how little control we have to force anything to happen. Thursday, December 19th, we have a really lovely aspect between Venus in Aquarius and Jupiter in Gemini. So these two are at a trine with one another. And whenever Venus and Jupiter meet, it is the two benefics coming together. It's like two besties coming together, having coffee and saying, "How are you?" Right? Have you been living through this shit show that everyone else has been living through as well? Venus in Aquarius is about embracing all of the parts of us that want to assert themselves into the world, right? It is about also the parts of us that are perhaps understanding, okay, maybe there needs to be more acceptance in my part for the fact that people work in different ways. And how can I create a healthy distance between what I would like to happen and what is actually true? Because that actually creates a different way of being in relationship to someone else. And don't forget that Venus, even though Venus is at 14 degrees by the time it creates a trine to Jupiter in Gemini this week, Venus is still coming away from a conjunction to Pluto in Aquarius that took place the weekend of December 6th. That weekend, I don't know about you, maybe this resonates or doesn't, brought a lot of information to people about their relationships, the role that they play in them, the power dynamics, how much when you assert yourself and choose to be who you want to be, how much that perhaps rubs people the wrong way. There was a lot of clarity that weekend and the week following because of that Venus-Pluto conjunction. And so now here, Venus has a much lovelier connection to her bestie Jupiter, both in air signs, Jupiter and Gemini, the ability to see things from a different perspective, right? And it's us after that weekend or after that aspect being able to say, you know what, I think we're all just different. This is how much I've changed this year. Of course, people are going to resist it. Here's something that landed for me in my own personal life recently. I have gone through a lot of transformation. I'm a sun in Capricorn. I had Pluto on my sun over the last 4 years. So I have truly been through massive transformation inside and out. And so the people in my life always knew me a certain way. And so as I transformed and I changed and I went down this spiritual path of getting to know myself, saw my trauma in a different way, all of the things, I changed. Inevitably, that's what Pluto does. And Pluto doesn't just change you a little bit. Pluto really kind of transforms you into a completely different person. So one of the things that landed for me is, wow, that must be really difficult for the people in my life to have known me for so long through a particular lens in a particular way, me fulfilling a particular role, and then to go through this massive transformation and then be something completely different in so many ways. That has to be hard for people, right? It has to be perhaps heartbreaking for people. How can it not be? A person that they love has changed so much that they feel unrecognizable. And there was something about that that allowed me to have so much more compassion for the way certain relationships have transpired, but to also honor my process and honor where they are. And so this trine between Venus and Aquarius and Jupiter and Gemini, I think is the opportunity to do that. Because again, Venus in Aquarius is about embracing everything I am and how I have changed and transformed. And Jupiter in Gemini is, and yeah, that must be hard. Or I see this differently. I see their resistance to my change through a different lens, right? This is also, I think this is also a great energy that will move through the weekend of reconciliations, of really beautiful conversations, especially amongst friends, right? When we're talking about air energy, we're talking about energy of friendship or community or groups. Great day for brainstorming, for meetings, for creativity, for sharing, for planning a creative project, a creative endeavor, a trip even in the future. Beautiful energy for that, because air energy just kind of wakes up this other part of the brain that reminds you of possibility, especially with Jupiter involved. So on Friday, December 20th, the sun gets to the 29th degree of Sagittarius. This entire week, the sun has been transiting the galactic center degrees of the zodiac. And in my studies, I have read different things. The most common thing that I have read is that the galactic center of Sagittarius is between the 26th and the 27th degree of Sagittarius. But because of orbs of conjunction, right, we can also count 28 degrees and 29 degrees. And the 29th degree of any sign is so strong, is so potent, is so beautiful. So I'm considering this whole week as a week of that galactic center energy. What is the galactic center? What is the energy of the galactic center? Well, it is an energy that really manifests a lot around some of our deepest desires. It is known to be an energy of luck. It is known to be an energy of kind of getting you over the hump of something, of manifesting certain things that you need in the nick of time. But again, there's so much around this week that has to do with a sense of freedom and liberation and us understanding how to practice that in our own lives. And by the time that the sun gets to 29 degrees Sagittarius, that is the sweet spot, right? Almost the boiling point of, I just want to be free. So I invite you to take Friday, right? Really anytime between Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, to really consider, what does that mean to me? Who have I become? How do I feel free to make decisions for my life based on what I genuinely feel and believe is the best for myself? When I trust myself, when I go within, how much more expansive and free do I feel? And can I remember above all else that I am free, that I am free now, that there is nothing outside of me, even though the media says so, even though politicians, systems say that I'm only allowed to do certain things. At a soul level, can I remember that I am always free? And when I begin to create a relationship with that innate, inherent sense of freedom, can I begin to see the world outside of me reflect that and change? That's what this is all about. Anytime we feel unclear about who we are in the world, that's a good thing, because there is an identity that is breaking away, that is only getting you closer to your soul's truth, which is that you are infinite, which is that you are limitless. And so when the mind tries to say, but how? But what does that mean? But what does that look like? But what do I have to do to get there? The reminder is always, you are already that, but you're trying to understand it in human terms, in egoic terms. You're trying to measure it in egoic ways. But when you spend enough time in there, you realize that the vastness of who you are is limitless and endless. And when you begin to vibrate from that space, when you begin to walk through life from that space, your external 3D reality begins to change, because the truth of who you are is inside. That is the truth. And that is ultimate freedom and liberation. To truly understand that is ultimate freedom and liberation. Because when we begin to focus on what we're focusing on within, when we begin to see ourselves as a child of the universe instead of just the child of my circumstances, a child of my parents, we begin to remember who we really are. And that, again, is true freedom and liberation. Saturday, December 21st, we have the Capricorn solstice. It is a beautiful day for rituals. It is a day in which we start Capricorn season, right? Any Capricorns out there, let me know when your birthdays are down in the comments. I'm a Capricorn of January 15th. I'm so looking forward to my birthday. I tend to look forward to my birthday. I will have a separate video for you next week talking all about the Capricorn solstice and what that means for you over the following 3 months, right? But whenever we get to Capricorn season, it's the beginning of winter, right? Here in the Northern Hemisphere. We have this beautiful supportive earth energy helping us digest a little bit of these big truths that were delivered to us in Sagittarius energy, especially with a Mercury retrograde in the mix. I think that this Capricorn season is going to help, again, bring some clarity, bring some grounding, but also Capricorn being ruled by Saturn is the responsibility that comes with honoring who we are. And if the last several weeks, even the last several months have been about you getting closer to the truth of who you are and the role that you play in your life, the role that you want to play in your life, not out of obligation, but because you are truly getting in touch with who you are, Capricorn and Saturn energy remind you that you have a responsibility to yourself to do that. And as we move into Capricorn season, we are going to come face to face with the realization, oh yeah, I'm the only one that can give myself permission to be this. Oh yeah, I'm the only one who gets to say, this is the role that I play. I, in true Saturnian fashion, right? Saturn rules Capricorn. In true Saturnian fashion, am the authority of my life. And how do I begin to walk from that space? How do I begin to make decisions from that space? How do I begin to dream from that space? The authority within, again, it's that light within. And when you create a relationship to it, and Saturn reminds us that anything worth building takes time, commitment, and showing up. When we take the time to commit, to show up for the connection to the light within through meditation, through contemplation, by going for walks, by enjoying our alone time, which Capricorn and Saturn energy truly represent in the zodiac. That is me becoming the authority in my life. And I really invite you to take a look at the world around us and ask yourself, how much longer am I going to allow this world that is so bizarre, that feels so backwards? And if it feels so backwards, it's because it is. Be the authority of my identity and the decisions that I make for myself. It's such an important Capricorn solstice, especially with a Pluto newly entered in Aquarius that will remain there for the next 20 years. Okay. Like I said, you will have the Capricorn solstice next week, where I will deep dive into that. And I will let you know what that means over the next 3 months. As always, may this be of service. So much love to you all. Don't forget to book your 2025 year ahead reading. The link is below. I will talk to you next week. Much love.